Welcome to Briefly Creative, a podcast that explores insights, stories, and frameworks for living a meaningful creative life. I'm your host, Greg Gunn. A quick housekeeping note before we start this one. In case you missed it, I write a companion newsletter to this podcast. In fact, I've been writing it for several years. So if you like the show, then you will love the newsletter. Each one is filled with links to design, mindsets, and other interesting stuff that I find. You can find a link to it in the show notes, or just head over to brieflycreative.fm. There's a sign-up form right there for you to fill out. Okay, quick note over. Let's talk taking care of yourself. Late last year, I started feeling a tingly sensation in my right pinky. It was uncomfortable at worst and occasionally accompanied by a dull pain, but it wouldn't happen every day, so I made note to stretch more and just simply carried on. But then it started happening every day. The tingling intensified and the pain became dull, continuous throbbing. And I started to feel the same sensation in my left forearm and left pinky. I asked a relative who works in medicine what to do, and they said, take ibuprofen for a week. See what happens. So I did, and it helped until I stopped taking it. And though subtle, the discomfort was enough to make it difficult to concentrate or even engage in conversation sometimes. Months later, I met with a doctor who helped put me on a treatment plan for ulnar neuropathy. I know that sounds terrifying, but it's essentially caused by overuse and pressure in not so ergonomic positions on my wrist and elbow. Now, I know I sound like an old man complaining about his rickety knees, but I share because I care. You see, I've spent many a year practicing less than healthy work habits, slouching over like a zombie when I type, working hours upon hours without taking breaks, and searing my retinas with beautiful bright blue light forever and ever. But as us olds say, just wait until you're my age. So, until your body turns on you, here are some things I've learned, outside of just getting exercise, that I think might help you. The first one is embracing ergonomics. To combat injury and syndromes like carpal tunnel and ulnar tunnel, yes, there's a different tunnel, set up your workspace in the most ergonomic way possible. That means arms bent at 90-degree angles, feet resting on the floor or on a footrest, and eyes staring at the top third of your screen or monitor. The second one is pamper your peepers. That means take care of your eyes. I used to buy cheap swap meet sunglasses because I just lose them all the time, and honestly, they look pretty cool. Until one day, while bragging about how affordable they were, someone pointed out that those cheap shades usually do not have any UV protection on them. And as a result, I was actually doing more harm to my eyes by wearing them because my pupils were dilated and letting more UV light in at the same time. Genius, right? My point is, take care of your eyes. Get an annual eye exam, splurge on the reflective coating, do what you can to keep them happy. Despite both my parents wearing thick glasses, I was fortunate enough to have really good vision until I was about 32. And then the eye strain started. So if you find yourself squinting a little or battling a headache at the end of the day, like I did, it's time for an ocular checkup. The third one on my list, take a break. Now, you can call me Captain Obvious, but take plenty of breaks. It sounds super easy, but I still forget to all the time. And this is especially true when I'm in the flow state midway through some deep design work. In fact, there are still plenty of days where I start something, blink, and then find that several hours have passed. That just happens. It's not a bad thing, but it happens. I've tried lots of ways to remind myself to take breaks. The Pomodoro technique, where you sort of set 25-minute increments followed by a 5-minute break. That technique is fantastic if you can stick to it, as is staying well hydrated, which is Mother Nature's way of telling you, hey, time to take a break. I picked up an Apple Watch last year, and its stand-up reminders have been the most effective for me. I see it, I listen to it, I stand up, and I take a quick break. I should have known it would take another screen to get me to take a break from the current screen I'm looking at. The last tip on my list here is invest in quality furniture if you can. There is an old saying, something along the lines of spend money on what separates you from the ground. Things like your shoes, mattress, chair, desk, and so on. And in my experience, that logic is pretty sound. So if you have the means to do so, don't skimp on those things. Case in point, I bought a very expensive Herman Miller Aeron chair about 11 years ago, and it was worth every penny. I spend at least 40% of my time comfortably sitting in it. No back issues. In fact, I'm sitting in it right now, and it is absolutely wonderful. All that is to say, just like naming your layers, putting thought and effort into how you physically work will make you a better and healthier designer. Thanks for joining me today. You can find more info, show notes, and a transcript of this episode at brieflycreative.fm. And if you enjoyed what you heard, consider rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to it. It would mean the world to me and really help the show out. Also, we have a weekly newsletter. You can read more about the episode and find fun, relevant links to things like tutorials, tools, and other useful creative adjacent stuff that I find. Thanks again for listening, and remember, what worked for someone else may not work the same way for you, but there's always something to learn from it. See you next time.